This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Thursday edition, the day before, technically the Valentine's edition, which, by the way, if you haven't gotten anything for your significant other for Valentine's Day yet, you probably should do that, since it is the day before. You've waited this long, you saved your money up, I'm hoping. Go get your significant other something great. I got mine a blender. She's been wanting one for the longest time. Also, my girlfriend has a birthday that's like 2 days before Valentine's Day, which is very unfortunate for me. But welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And today is the Thursday edition of the podcast, and we have a pretty good show. I have a feeling this is going to be a great show. The day before Valentine's Day, I'm wearing my pink quarter zip right now. I'm ready. Let's get the love is in the air with the MLB proposing new playoff format that everybody hates, Carlos Beltran details about the Houston Astros scandal that everybody hates, the NFL QB market that you're going to hate listening to by the time it's over, and then we have also the ACC, Big Ten, SEC hating players getting paid. That's another thing. Then we also have the Michigan State coaching search, what came out of that and why everyone hates it. And then we have the NBA All-Star Game, which I hate personally. So let's get to it. Let's start off the MLB in an attempt to change everyone's, to pivot the conversation about baseball from the Astros cheating scandal, which obviously didn't work because we're about to get to that in the next segment, but to pivot everything from the Astros cheating scandal to outrage over a new playoff format. So, the MLB has been going through different changes. They've been trying to change the pace of play, trying to make games go faster pretty much. They've added a pitch clock. They've added, they've told batters that they can't just dilly-dally outside the batter's box anymore, although teams still do that. I mean, just saying, players still do that. And so they have all these changes to the game. They added a change to the minor leagues where you got to put a guy on second in extra innings to start extra innings, so the extra innings will go by faster. They're trying to get the younger audience, and one new way that they are trying to get the younger audience is by changing and expanding the MLB playoffs. So there is possible expansion coming for the playoff, for the MLB, for baseball playoffs. They are considering adding 2 additional playoff teams for each league, which will bring the total to 7 teams for each league, bringing the number of teams that make the playoff to 14 out of 30, which is, that's half the league making it. It's basically the NBA at this point. They're trying to make it like the NBA, where the NBA, half the teams make the playoffs. You're below 500, you can make the playoffs. Stuff like that. So, another interesting part about it is teams with the best record in each league will get a bye during the wild card round, which is fine, that's whatever. And then the rest of the games in the wild card round will be a best of 3 series. Currently, they have 2 one-game playoffs in the wild card round, which I don't necessarily like. These wild card games or whatever, I don't necessarily like. I do feel like that it's baseball. It needs to be decided in a series, at least a 3-game series. So I actually like this change a little bit. This I'm not against, because it makes sense. Because throughout the whole season, you're playing against a team 3 times, and then you barely squeak into the playoffs, and now you got to play one team once, and it's a winner take all thing. If you lose, you have no chance of coming back. If you win, then good job, you won 1 game. You could have just had a lucky game or something like that. A lucky bounce went your way. In a 3-game series, that's less likely to happen. So I like that. However, all 3 games are at home, which I understand for logistical issues. That's probably the easier way to go. But there we go. So the second best record in each league will be able to choose which one of the 3 wildcard teams it plays in the first round. That's an interesting concept because in every other league, everything's set. The playoffs are set. You don't get to choose who you get to play in the playoffs. It's kind of the whole point of why seeding is so important. It makes winning important. If you don't want to play the Lakers, then don't be the 8 seed. If you don't want to play the Clippers, don't be the 7 or the 6 seed, whatever, how the NBA playoffs are set. So that's interesting. And they said they're going to do like not a reality show, but kind of like a draft type show, a decision show where the teams get to announce what teams they want to play, which that opens up a lot of avenues for trash talking, especially if they lose to the team that they chose. Like, for instance, and this could help out some teams. For instance, the Dodgers, they lost against the Nationals. They probably would not have chosen to play the Nationals in the first round of the playoffs. So they probably would have changed that up and probably played someone else, which we'll get to that later. I'll get into the 4 teams that would have gotten added to the playoffs if this format went in place last year. But they would have made it like a show about it, and I feel like that just opens a lot of avenues for the lesser teams that got chosen to kind of have more motivation to beat these better teams. So it's kind of a disadvantage to choose your own team, because if you have to choose it on live television, you're basically telling that other team, hey, we're better than you, we're going to beat you, we're probably going to beat you in 3 games or whatever, or 2 games, and that's that. So that's interesting, and the fact that they want to make it a reality type thing is kind of dumb. I mean, the NBA did the same thing with the All-Star Draft, which it was kind of a big deal last year, Team Giannis versus Team LeBron, who's going to choose who, blah, blah, blah. But hey, did anybody watch the NBA All-Star Draft this year? No? The only thing you saw was that Giannis didn't choose James Harden because he wanted someone to pass the ball? Okay, that's it. There you go. That's the only thing about this year's NBA All-Star Draft that I actually heard about. I have the draft, of course. I know all the teams on the rosters now because I'm going to be talking about that later. But for the most part, I did not watch the event. I did not hear anything about the event. Now, obviously, this is for the playoffs, so it's kind of a bigger deal. But I feel like that's good for the first year. But then after the first year, nobody's going to really care. Everybody's just going to wait for the notification to come on their phone and be like, oh, cool, you're playing them, whatever. So that is an interesting concept. I don't necessarily agree with it. It's an interesting concept nonetheless. So if this went in effect this past year, here are the teams that would have made the playoffs. The extra teams that would have made the playoffs. So you would have had the Cleveland Indians at 93 and 69. Then you would have the 84 and 78 Boston Red Sox. Then you would have the 86-76 New York Mets and the 85-77 Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, at the end of the season last year, would you have put the Mets in the playoffs? I think not. The Mets, they had a very hot summer. They had a hot August, but then once September rolled around, they fell apart, and that's why they didn't make the playoffs. That's why they lost out to the Nationals. That's why they lost out to the other team that I can't think of at the moment. But same thing for the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks, they play in a tough division, so it would be great for them to get into the playoffs. However, do they really deserve it? Then Houston and the Dodgers would have gotten first-round byes, which means the Dodgers would not have played the Nationals and probably would not have lost to the Nationals in the first round of the playoffs this year. So here are my gripes. It gives a chance for losing teams to make the playoffs. For instance, someone gave an outlook of what it would look like. And like in 2016, there was a below 500 team that would have made the playoffs under this format because that's just how it was that year. That's just how the league was that year. I don't like that. So yeah, some people have been arguing that it could make more regular seasons games matter, especially for smaller market teams that usually never, like for instance the Mariners. The Mariners would have made the playoffs one year if this was in effect that year. Teams like that, teams that don't really expect to make the playoffs, but they went on a nice run, a decent run, and they are just outside of that wild card. It could make it matter for them. More teams could get into the wild card, the playoff race this way, which would get more teams engaged, more fans engaged in the playoffs. So I see I see the understanding there. I see why they want that to happen. However, here are two things that involve trading. Teams would be more conservative at the trade deadline because with an easier chance at making the playoff, a larger chance at making the playoffs, some teams would hold back on fire sale and selling all their best players to get prospects and stuff like that to build for the future. They would instead try to win now and try to make the playoffs because anything can happen in the Major League Baseball playoffs. However, it also turns into teams won't pay players as much. Why should I pay you when I have a better chance of making the playoffs? When half the teams in the league, I don't need you, Mookie Betts, to make the playoffs. I don't need you to make the playoffs because we can easily sneak into the playoffs as a 7 seed or whatever and do something, make some noise there. So it kind of diminishes players' value, and we'll see if this actually goes through. I highly doubt it will. I've seen a lot of people like it. I've seen a lot of people hate it. I personally not a fan. I feel like it's the opposite of what people have been saying, where it makes more regular season games matter. I feel like it kind of diminishes it because, the regular season matters more, I suppose, for the teams that are sneaking into the playoffs, but the actual playoff games, you're going to have a below 500 team playing the second best team in the National League, and it's probably not going to end well. So it's an interesting concept. I'm very on the fence about it. If it went in place, I wouldn't completely be against it, but right now I'm going to say I'm against it. Now, coming up in the next segment, I will talk about something that I am very against, and that is the Astros cheating scandal. We're still talking about it when we return.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
I mentioned a couple times that the Major League Baseball is doing a very good job at keeping people engaged this offseason. Even if you don't necessarily care about baseball, you've heard about baseball in the past month. It's actually been a full month since the Astros cheating scandal. The punishment went down a full month ago, January 14th or something like that. It's been a whole month since the punishments have came down. It's been a whole month since Red Sox and the Astros fired their managers. And then it was just a couple days later where Carlos Beltran was then relieved of his duties as the Mets manager. And more info keeps coming out. It's kind of trickling out at this moment. The MLB is trying to distract everybody with this new playoff format to get people talking about that instead of talking about the cheating scandal. But then more details came out about the Astros cheating scandal. There's a Wall Street Journal article. There was more Carlos Beltran details, which we're about to get into. There were more details coming out about this Astros cheating scandal, specifically involving Carlos Beltran, who's a former Astros player. He played for the Astros in 2017. He's a former Yankees player. He played for the Yankees a couple years in 14, 15, and 16 before he went to the Astros. He was also a Yankees assistant, a coach, something like that, in 2018 and 2019. And then in November, he was hired as the New York Mets manager, and then he was effectively fired 2 months later. So there's this article on The Athletic that goes more in depth on it. It brings up A.J. Hinch's interview that he had with the MLB Network. It brought up a Wall Street Journal article that involved the director of team operations, Derek Vigoa, and his developing his algorithm called the Code Breaker that they had before Beltran came. So let's get into it. So Carlos Beltran apparently helped create the system. He was a senior member of the team. Now, if you think about clubhouse dynamics and the politicking that goes into a Major League Baseball clubhouse, he used this stuff to his advantage because he was a veteran player. He was almost 40 years old. He's been playing for 20 years. He's won World Series. He's a pretty accomplished player. So few players spoke out against this senior member of the team. Although, once Beltran left, some of the sign stealing still continued, but I digress. So some players that were anonymous, they were anonymous sources to The Athletic, and manager A.J. Hinch all said that they felt powerless to stopping Carlos Beltran. Which, if you think about the clubhouse dynamic, if you're a rookie, what are you going to do in that situation? If you're a rookie and you're coming in, and the most veteran player there is telling you, hey, we're doing this, what other reference do you have? You don't have any prior reference telling you, hey, that's not okay, we can't do that. You're in the majors now. Maybe this is the thing they do in the majors. You have no prior knowledge about what else to do. So if you're a rookie, that makes sense. When it comes to some of those younger guys, for some of the older guys, you know that this is not how it's supposed to be done. And apparently this clubhouse dynamic, you can't talk back to the veteran player, apparently. And this specifically brings down to A.J. Hinch. A.J. Hinch had a recent interview with the MLB Network. He did not make any excuses for his failure to prevent the Astros' illegal practices, but he mentioned that Carlos Beltran's sway over the clubhouse helped explain the inaction of Hinch and his other coaches and players. No one wanted to challenge Carlos Beltran. What? You're the manager of a baseball team. You are supposed to be the top guy in that clubhouse. How were you challenged, threatened by Carlos Beltran at all? How? Now, of course, I've never played Major League Baseball, so I don't know what the actual clubhouse dynamic is there. I know teams want veteran presence in there for their experience and to help young guys through their problems and some issues that they go through because, hey, it happens to everybody in the league. Happens to everybody. And like I mentioned, some players mentioned they were in their first year. They didn't want to challenge a veteran. They didn't want to go against the status quo or the status quo that they thought was in place because they were just a rookie. They didn't know any better. Which that excuse can only go for so long, but you know what I'm saying. So another interesting part of all of this new information that came out. Carlos Beltran played for the Yankees in 2014, 2015, and 2016 before joining the Astros in 2017. Multiple sources said that Carlos Beltran told the Astros that their sign-stealing methods were behind the times. These methods were, of course, different from the camera in the outfield thing. So what their methods were, they had this goes to the Wall Street article, Wall Street Journal article that reported that the whole scheme was organization-wide, with the director of team operations, Derek Vigoa, developing an algorithm called Code Breaker in Excel. This algorithm will help decode signs more quickly. This was legal as an advanced scouting tool. And it would have been legal, it would have continued to be legal if they did not use it during live games. And that's what apparently they were doing. They were using this Code Breaker in live games. But apparently, Carlos Beltran comes in and says, hey, you guys are in the Stone Age. Let me show you what 2017 looks like. Let me show you what the future looks like. Young, old men, or what, I don't know. I try to make that sound cooler than it actually is. So apparently, Alex Cora, who's the Red Sox manager who got fired, and Carlos Beltran decided that this method was not working, and it was too slow, so they decided to do it themselves. And what came out of them doing it themselves? Camera in center field, buzzers potentially, banging on trash cans. A quicker method to get the information out to the hitters as they're hitting. So this, of course, kind of implicates the Yankees. This kind of implicates the Yankees. It makes me think that the Yankees were kind of doing something like this before the Astros did it. And that's kind of what is being said here. Carlos Beltran came in after 3 years with the Yankees, said, hey, this is old news. What are y'all doing? Change the method up. Astros finally break through, win a World Series. Now, what is absurd of this all is, of course, the A.J. Hinch thing. A.J. Hinch saying he didn't like it. He didn't like it. He didn't want his clubhouse doing it, blah, blah, blah. He broke a couple TVs or whatever. But he never stopped it. And apparently this is organizational wide with the code breaker, the Excel code breaker file. It's organizational wide. Maybe Hinch felt he wasn't comfortable going to the higher ups and complaining about their veteran player cheating in this way. I just don't believe it for a second. I think A.J. Hinch kind of is involved in this way more than he's letting on. None of the Astros players have even spoken about it, which will change because pitchers and catchers reported yesterday, and spring training is beginning, which means they're going to be around the media a lot more. So there's going to be a lot of questions. A lot of questions that Jose Altuve, Carlos Carrera, George Springer, these guys are going to have to answer. Another interesting thing I read, and I like this one because it doesn't completely exonerate my boy, but two members of the 2017 team stated that Brian McCann at one point approached Beltran, asked him to stop, but Beltran disregarded it and steamrolled everybody and just continued doing whatever he was doing. Which I'm happy about that, because my boy Brian McCann tried to stop it, which makes sense because he's one of those old school baseball guys who doesn't like people celebrating home runs. So I was very shocked that he was even involved in this, but apparently he tried to shut it down. Now, of course, that doesn't mean he didn't take advantage of it, but he tried to stop it at least. I'll take it. That's my boy. When we come back, we will go to the NFL, and we'll talk about the stacked quarterback market that is coming to free agency near you when we return.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to Extreme Cage Fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
I cannot describe to you guys how stacked this NFL QB market is. It is stacked. If you need a QB, this is the best year to need a QB. Not only from the available quarterbacks in free agency, the available quarterbacks that could be traded, or from the draft. We have pretty good quarterbacks coming out of the draft as well. So if you need this is the best year to need a quarterback. The best. So let's get into it. So, of course, we look at the quarterbacks that are going to be unrestricted free agents. We're looking at Tom Brady. We're looking at Dak Prescott, Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Brees, Ryan Tannehill, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Phillip Rivers. We look at quarterbacks that could potentially get traded at some point, which is just Cam Newton and David Carr. And then we look at the guys who are getting drafted this year, which is Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert. And then, thinking long-term here, a year from now, Trevor Lawrence. This is the perfect time to need a quarterback. So let's get into it. Tom Brady is, of course, going to headline this QB market. He is the biggest story in the NFL offseason. I'm actually kind of sick and tired of hearing about it already, and he hasn't even officially hit the free agent market. He doesn't officially hit it until like 27 days or something like that. I think it's like the first day of March or something like that. I'm not 100% positive on that. But he is 43 years old. He's an old man. He needs a lot of weapons around him. He needs a great offensive line because he can't move that much. He needs a great offensive line, and he needs great weapons around him, which he did not have either in New England this past year, and we all saw how that happened. They still made the playoffs because of that elite defense that they had, but once they made the playoffs, they didn't get anything done offensively. They couldn't get anything done. They just threw to try to get Edelman involved a lot more than he should be involved. No offense to Edelman, he's just not a top-tier receiver. He's just one of those. He's like Wes Welker. He will get you those catches, but he's never going to be the number one target. Or he should not be the number one target. And as you saw in New England, that didn't work out for them. They got Antonio Brown for a little bit, and that one game was glorious, but got rid of him for obvious reasons. So it's going to be interesting to see where Tom Brady goes. There's, of course, rumors that he can go to Dallas. There's rumors that he could go to the Oakland. You got the Chargers that could desperately need him. The Colts. I've heard the Colts a little bit there. So it's going to be interesting where he ends up. More than likely he's going to be back in New England because Robert Kraft does not want to get rid of him. But you know who does want to get rid of him probably, especially with all this QB market right here? It's one Bill Belichick. I also think Tom Brady's going to ask for way too much money to get any of that help that he desperately needs. We'll move on to another guy who's going to ask for a lot of money, and deservedly so, Dak Prescott. Now, I recall at the beginning of the football season, I was nowhere near the Dak Prescott train. I was kind of like, yeah, he's okay, but does he deserve all that money? Like, let's be real here. Does he deserve piles and piles of cash that he is asking for? Well, he proved me wrong. This year, he completed 65% of his passes, averaged 8.2 yards per attempt, threw for 30 touchdowns, got 11 interceptions. He was ranked 6th in adjusted net yards per attempt, 4th in QBR, never missed a game due to injury, which I'll knock on wood for him right there. And he's looking to become one of the highest paid players in the NFL. He's probably, more than likely, going to get franchise tagged by the Cowboys. However, Jerry Jones usually gets his guy. If Dak Prescott is the guy for the Cowboys, he would have been signed already. So I have a feeling he might be going somewhere else to get paid, which he could go to many places, like I mentioned, the Raiders, Chargers, Colts, the Saints maybe. Who knows? Speaking of Saints, we'll talk about Teddy Bridgewater. He's 27 years old, had that horrific knee injury early on in his career with the Vikings. The Saints went 5-0 with Bridgewater as the starter when Drew Brees went down with a thumb injury earlier this year. He completed 68% of his passes. He averaged 7.1 yards per attempt, threw 9 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He settled for a 1-year, $7.25 million deal to return to New Orleans. He's an interesting quarterback to watch. Teams could jump on him. He's a great game manager. Now, I know some people use the game manager as a deterrent to some quarterbacks, but here's the thing. You can't have a Patrick Mahomes. You can't have the home run guys all the time. Sometimes a game manager is good enough to win. Ryan Tannehill, is a pretty good game manager. He led the Titans to the AFC Championship game. Sometimes you just need a game manager. Alex Smith is a good example. He'd been to the AFC Championship for the 49ers and for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's done it multiple times. He is a capable quarterback before his injury, but Alex Smith is a game manager. It's not a bad thing to have if you want a guy who doesn't make a lot of mistakes, especially if you're a team that has been spurred by mistakes like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Could be a great guy to have. Next up, Drew Brees. He's 41 years old. He missed 5 games last year with a thumb injury, as I mentioned. There's no drop-off statistically, though. 74.3% on completion percentage on his attempts. He averaged 7.9 yards per attempt, threw 27 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He's already stated, though, that he's either staying in New Orleans or retiring, so that's more of a retirement watch. But that affects the Teddy Bridgewater thing. If he retires, do the Saints go after Teddy Bridgewater? Of course, you have the Taysom Hill thing that's been kind of going around for some reason the past couple days, but I highly doubt that will happen. So the Drew Brees thing is probably the first domino. It's either Drew Brees or Tom Brady that's going to be the first domino in this QB market, because if Drew Brees retires, Teddy Bridgewater probably gets signed with the Saints. If he gets signed with the Saints, then that's one team off the market, and all these other guys will probably start falling, because I guarantee you some teams are probably waiting to see what the status of Teddy Bridgewater is going to be. Because if Drew Brees comes back, Teddy Bridgewater's gone, more than likely, and he's going to go to a team that could use him. Like I said, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Next up, Ryan Tannehill. 32. He completed over 70% of his passes, averaged over 9 yards per attempt in a season. He's the second player to do that, other than Joe Montana. He's the most accurate quarterback in the NFL this past year. Titans are very unlikely to let him walk, especially since he started halfway through the season and led him to an AFC Championship game. They probably won't commit big-time money on him for the long term. He might get franchise tagged. We don't know. That's another domino that we're waiting for to drop. But he had a pretty good season for the Titans. He kind of looked not the best in the playoffs, but he got the job done. Once again, another example. If you have a game manager quarterback, you can still succeed. Now, of course, the Titans' success kind of focuses on Derrick Henry, which is also a free agent. So they have to re-sign Derrick Henry, and that's probably going to be the Titans' main goal this offseason, if they see how much they get Derrick Henry for, and then they can focus on Ryan Tannehill. Next up, you have the number 1 and number 2 draft picks from so long ago. I think it was 2013 draft. Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota. Jameis Winston, both 26, by the way. Jameis Winston for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He threw for over 5,000 yards, 33 touchdowns. Just insane. That's a fantastic year for any quarterback, except for he threw 30 picks and he had 12 fumbles. Who is going to pay all that money for a mistake-prone quarterback? It's an interesting concept, because he has shown spurs of being one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he's also shown that he could be one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. He is such a enigma here in the NFL. We don't know. I don't know anything. He's either getting re-signed by the Buccaneers or it's just a wild card. I don't even think the Buccaneers will re-sign him, because Bruce Arians seems to not like him that much. Then you have Marcus Mariota, who completed less than 60% of his passes. He was sacked 13.5% of the time that he was passing the ball. He got benched for Ryan Tannehill after the Titans got off to a 2-4 start. He's still young. He still has talent, and he's potential. More than likely, he's going to be a journeyman backup from now on. I can see the Patriots picking him up, maybe being a backup for the Patriots. But other than that, that's pretty much it for Marcus Mariota as a starter. He could be a pretty good backup quarterback for the next 10 years. You can definitely see it. It's not a terrible route to go down. Next up, we have Phillip Rivers, who was just notified that he will not be a Charger, which we've kind of already known that, but the Chargers are going to move on from Phillip Rivers. He is 38 years old. A couple teams will probably take a chance on him just because of past success. He threw 20 interceptions last year. He finished 15th in the the inning over average. 22nd in the league in QBR. He's old. He's got the lack of ability, and he needs a team with a strong offensive line to succeed. He's kind of in the same boat as Tom Brady, except he doesn't have the allure of Tom Brady. Then the other quarterbacks I mentioned, you have Cam Newton, who David Tepper is waiting for his medical before he makes any decisions on him. You have David Carr, which there's a lot of rumors that the Raiders might move on from David Carr. Maybe they're looking at Tannehill, they're looking at Tom Brady, stuff like that. And then I'm running out of time. There's so many quarterbacks I can't even talk in a 10-minute time frame. Like, I am a minute over on this segment. But you have Joe Burrow, you got Tua, you got Justin Herbert coming in the draft as well. So the Miami Dolphins, Cincinnati Bengals, they got their guys probably lined up. Then, looking way down the road, next year, tank for Trevor Lawrence coming in next year's draft. It's insane. Quarterbacks galore. This is the best QB market I've ever seen. And I'm excited to see how it shakes out. I'm waiting for that first domino to fall, and then we'll have constant news updates, and you are going to be tired of it by the end of the summer. You're going to be begging for football to be back, which it already is. Watch the XFL. Anyways, in the next segment, I'm moving to college, just college athletics in general. We'll be talking about the NCAA trying to stop players from getting paid.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
So, in case you didn't know, throughout the whole football season, the collegiate football season, there was a bunch of different states, specifically California. They started out, they passed a new law that collegiate athletes can make money off their name, image, and likeness. Then other states started passing that, and then pretty much most of the states have passed it, but with like different quirks and different changes to the rules depending on the state. So the NCAA, of course, doesn't like that, because the NCAA is known for their amateurism and their players playing for the love of the game and playing for their academic scholarships and stuff like that. And so, yeah, NCAA President Mark Emmert went to the U.S. Congress to discuss the important issue of paying college athletes or allowing them to make money off of their likeness. So there's one U.S. Senator, and I put this in because I thought it was interesting. Marsha Blackburn, who's a junior U.S. Senator from Tennessee, said this: "I will tell you, there has been little, if any, transparency between James Wiseman, the University of Memphis, and your organization. The way this went about, the way you arrived at your decision, when you talked about student academic success, well-being, and fairness, this has been a failure for you and the way that you have handled this." So she is, of course, bringing up the James Wiseman thing that happened for Memphis earlier this year, where he received money from Penny Hardaway, who was the head coach of Memphis. His family received money from him, or received a house or something from him, before Penny was even coaching for Memphis, but he was considered a booster for Memphis, and this was deemed as an illegal act by the NCAA, but no one really told Wiseman or Memphis about it. They just kind of brought it down when Wiseman finally got onto campus for Memphis, and then it was kind of brought down, and then Wiseman was suspended from the NCAA, which I don't know why he was suspended from the NCAA. But he left, and now he's just kind of training for the NBA draft because he's going to be the number one pick. He's going to be the number one pick in the NBA draft, so why would he waste his time with the NCAA? So that's one issue. She demonstrated the perils and strictly parochial interest in rules regarding NCAA amateurism, specifically the forthcoming name, image, and likeness reforms the NCAA now finds itself desperately trying to undertake before a cascade of state laws throws college athletics into an unprecedented state of decentralized chaos. So, NCAA, what's their arguments? What's their arguments about this? Arguments against name, image, and likeness law involve messy recruiting inducements and outright pay-for-play system. So basically, if you want to get a player, you promise them, some car dealership or whatever promises them, hey, if you come to this school, I'll give you $1 million for your likeness to be in commercials and stuff like that. Who's going to say no? And I agree with the NCAA on this front just because it will become unfair. Recruiting will become impossible, especially if you are a smaller school. But here's the thing, recruiting's already impossible. I actually think this would kind of give the smaller schools a bigger shot because then they don't have to rely on their own money, their own athletic budget. They can rely on their boosters to kind of help out. Remember SMU of the 80s? Their boosters were huge. Their boosters were the main reason SMU got as good as they did. Their booster, coaching had a little bit to do with it, but the school had nothing to do with it. I mean, it's the 80s, it's college football in the 80s. The facilities were probably bad. The field was probably bad. The fans were probably ravenous because it was Texas. But at the end of the day, it was the boosters giving these kids cars, giving them houses, giving them payments, and then they became a competitive football team in the old SWAC, Southwestern Athletic Conference, where everyone cheated. If you didn't watch that 30 for 30, which you should, it's the best 30 for 30 they have. It's my favorite. Everybody's cheating. So SMU just came out there and cheated better. And they got caught multiple times, and then they got the death penalty, and yada, yada, yada. So it actually gives a chance for these smaller schools that have big-time donors to actually become more competitive. Now, here's my thing. You will have to regulate this. I don't know how you're going to regulate it, but there has to be some way to regulate the making money off of names, image, and likeness. Because I do agree it is kind of unfair because all these big money-making schools, their boosters and stuff like that, they just pay for teams and stuff like that. So I'm proposing that you kind of have like a cap on how much one player can make, they can get endorsements and they can get jersey sales and stuff like that. But after like a certain amount, maybe like $500,000, $250,000, whatever, that's not up to me. After they make a certain amount, it gets kind of cut off. And this is, of course, by a yearly basis, of course. It gets cut off, and then any more money they make goes either to like a trust fund that they get when they graduate, or I don't want to say it goes to the school. The school doesn't deserve it. If it's jersey sales, then I guess the school can have it. But if it's like a commercial or something like that, and they make more money than they were allotted, like over the cap, then it goes into a trust fund that they can then get when they graduate. Which means graduate. Because if the NCAA wants to be on their high horse and claim that academics are the main reason that we don't do this, then let's keep them on there, I guess. You have to graduate from your college to get that money. If you leave early for the NFL, and I'm of course, if you leave early to go to the NFL, but come back and get your degree either online or way down in the future, you still get that money. Still in that fund, you can still get it. I'm just saying, if you leave early for the NFL, you will not get that money until you come back and earn your degree. I don't know how they're going to do that, but that's one suggestion I have. Because if every player can only make a certain amount of money, then that kind of evens the playing field. Where, for instance, Trevor Lawrence can't get $1 million from some random Clemson car dealer. Meanwhile, Joe Schmo from San Jose State is making like $500 for coming to a restaurant or something for a kid's party or something like that. Like, it kind of helps out with that, you know? So that way, yeah, the player could hypothetically still do the $1 million deal, but most of these players are too young to understand that waiting is great. So they're going to go for the amount of money that they can get right now, so they might take less just so they get it right now. Now, I'm, of course, kind of downplaying the intelligence of some of these college athletes, because, I mean, most college athletes are very smart, but I still think there should be a cap on it or something. People smarter than me are the ones that are going to make these decisions, or if in the case of the NCAA, people that are not as smart as me are going to be making these decisions. And it's very interesting on how it's going to go, how it's going to be governed, because it is happening. It's going to happen, whether the NCAA likes it or not. Some teams might leave the NCAA, because I know some teams, especially in California, are for that. They're okay with that. And players, I believe, should get paid at least a little bit, especially off their likeness. I don't think players should get paid from the college or anything like that, because they're already getting scholarships, food, clothes, academic help, stuff like that, free education, stuff like that, which I know some people use that against this argument. It's like, so what if they're getting all that? They're not getting paid for their services. I don't think you understand that they still get stipends every month and stuff like that, but that's all fine and dandy, but they still don't make money off of the blank number 16 jersey that Clemson has. They don't make money off of that, and I think that needs to change. If you make a jersey or you make a Lego figure or something like that, these are things I've seen, by the way. If you make something like that, then the player should get a cut of that money, should get paid for his likeness, and we should have an NCAA football game, because good Lord, I've been playing NCAA 14 for the longest time, and you know what? I kind of want better graphics, and I want App State and those little teams to be in, because they're not in the game in 2014, and I want them in the game. Dang it, just give it to... Anyways, so I don't think they should get paid by the colleges, but I do think they should get paid for their names, image, and likeness. When we return, we add some more fuel to the fire about the fairness of players, as one coach left another program to join Michigan State when we return.
Are you looking to get your college football fixed? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Man, for the longest time, this Michigan State coaching search was looking like a disaster. Now, of course, earlier in the week, Mark D'Antonio retired and left Michigan State, kind of in turmoil. Now, some fans agree it was kind of time, but the timing of it was kind of terrible, since it was the day after signing day, or a couple days before signing day, and he just got a retention bonus of like $5 or $6 million in January, so he kind of made out like a bandit. Now, a new source has come out and said that D'Antonio wanted to coach in the 2020 season. Then he would retire and pick his own replacement. He would crown his own replacement. However, apparently Michigan State didn't like that. They went out and hired a search firm so they could look into finding a new head coach after the 2020 season after D'Antonio retired. Now, apparently, D'Antonio found out about this. He was upset about it, and he abruptly retired near National Signing Day. Now, why does this matter? So, I mean, first off, it's February. Most of the coaching hires were made in December, January. Usually coaching hires do not happen in February. That is the worst possible time because, I mean, the last recruiting class has locked in. They signed their letters of intent. You do not want to be looking for a new head coach after that has happened because those players might be loyal to the former coach and they could leave because of what happened. Michigan State then went on to hire Mel Tucker, who is the former Colorado head coach. He coached at Colorado for one whole year. He was in the initial talks for the Michigan State head coaching job. He actually tweeted this just 5 days ago. While I am flattered to be considered for the head coaching job at Michigan State football, I am committed to Colorado football for hashtag the build of our program. It's great athletes, coaches, and supporters. Hashtag unfinished business. Hashtag go Buffs. We are hashtag relentless. Hashtag culture. Hashtag the build. That was 5 days ago. And he up and left in the middle of the night. Because the notification for him getting hired happened at like 1:40 at night. 1:40 in the morning. Which in their time zone, I guess, would be like 12:30 or 11:30. One of the two. I forgot. But yeah, it's just an odd timing. He turned down initial interest from the Spartans, like I said in the tweet. But Michigan State kept coming back repeatedly, probably because they had no better option. I was hearing Brett Bielema was an option. I was hearing Bo Pelini was an option. I was hearing Butch Jones was an option. So they're kind of struggling. Michigan State was kind of struggling there. So the deal that was impossible to ignore for Mel Tucker was doubling his Colorado coaching pool, salary pool, and including substantial increase to Michigan State strength and conditioning staff budget and program resources, which will more than double Tucker's Colorado salary. So, of course, speculation about this began after Michigan State swung and missed on Cincinnati's Luke Fickell, who he was perfectly fine with staying in Cincinnati because he has a great program there. They signed 3 4-stars, which is unheard of for a Group of 5 team. So let's go more into Mel Tucker. Who is he? Why is this a good fit, or is it a good fit at all? Mel Tucker began his coaching career at Michigan State on Nick Saban's staff in the late 1990s. He's been on national championship winning staffs at Ohio State and Alabama. He spent 3 seasons as the defensive coordinator at Georgia before taking that Colorado job in 2019. He led the Buffs to 2 top 25 wins in a 5-7 season, but things were looking up for Colorado as they signed their highest class since 2011. It was like 35th in the country. It was like 7th in the Pac-12 or something like that. However, but I mean, that's good. It was his first real recruiting class. That's a pretty good recruiting class to get when you're a first-year head coach. This sucks so hard for Colorado. Because like I said a couple days ago, it was terrible timing for Michigan State. It was terrible timing for D'Antonio to leave. And arguably, I mean, of course, you're seeing right here, Michigan State's a higher caliber program than Colorado is. So it was terrible timing for Michigan State. Especially in that tough division you're in. Playing Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan every year. Playing Iowa every other year, Wisconsin. You go from, you're in that tough conference, you lose arguably your best head coach in school history. You lose him. And it's February. Who are you going to find? Luke Fickell turned you down. They get Mel Tucker. Which, by the way, is a great hire. It's a great hire for Michigan State. Mel Tucker is a fantastic hire for Michigan State. But it sucks because he was a great hire for Colorado. And he did a great job at Colorado in only 1 year. He was building upon it with that 35th ranked recruiting class. And now that's kind of out the door, as Colorado is now struggling to think of who to hire at this point. Who do you hire at this point? You pretty much have to hire from within. Because, no offense to Colorado, but some names I'm going to name are not going to jump from the team they're at to join Colorado. Especially some of the teams that are head coaches currently. They're not going to spring for this Colorado job. So we're going to get into it here. I have a couple coaches. This first coach is probably the least likely, but I thought it was interesting that he was mentioned at all. Then we go into the insider guys that could get hired. Then we go into the guys that are coaching other schools that could come. But like I just said, I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. No offense to Colorado. Colorado, I love it. I love the Buffalo. I love their mascot. I love everything about it. I love Colorado. Great stadium. But yikes. What a terrible time. It's not even about like Colorado. It's about like the timing of everything. Because what coach, after just working his ass off to get a recruiting class, is going to leave and come to a different school where then they have to work with completely new kids and then go through the whole recruiting process basically with the kids already on your team. You have to recruit the kids on your team to buy in. It's just a difficult situation. So this first guy I'm talking about, Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator, coming off a Super Bowl win. And like I said, this is very unlikely. Eric Bieniemy. He's the all-time rushing leader for Colorado. He played on that 1990 national championship team for Colorado. He could be spurred by the NFL due to not getting any NFL jobs, due to being Rooney ruled or whatever. However, I think this job is below him because he easily could be a head coach in the NFL. I also think even if he does take it, it's going to be a short-term option because he would only be doing it to become a head coach in the NFL. Of course, things can change. He could have an affection for his alma mater. It could help him through these bad times, but I highly doubt it. I just don't see it at all. Next up, you have Tyson Summers. He's the defensive coordinator for the Buffs. He has past head coaching experience at Georgia Southern. Wasn't the best. He went 5-13, and he was fired midway through his second season. Then another name that was interesting to me, Darren Chiaverini, which I hope I said that correctly. He is the wide receiver coach. He is one of the top recruiters in the country. Now, the only thing, this is why this is interesting to me, because that sounds all really familiar to me. Could be a potential Dabo Sweeney-like hire for Colorado. And no offense to Colorado, but Colorado, I mean, I'm from the area, so I not Colorado, I'm from Clemson, but Colorado is kind of where Clemson was all those years ago, except Clemson had pretty high expectations when Tommy Bowden got fired, or Tommy Bowden stepped down. Clemson had very high expectations. They started the year out ranked 8th, and they got blown out by Alabama, had a very disappointing year, lost to Wake Forest, and then Tommy Bowden dipped out, and that's why we hired Dabo Sweeney. But this could be an interesting situation, especially in this time of college football where everybody's trying to find that new Dabo Sweeney, that new Coach Orgeron. This could be the guy. I don't know anything about him, though. I just know that he is the wide receiver coach and he's the top recruiter in the country, which reminds me a lot of Dabo Sweeney. Now here's the guys that are head coaches currently in Group of 5 schools, and they could make the jump, but I highly doubt it, especially with these programs. You have Brian Harsin from Boise State. The only reason he's involved is just because he's kind of unhappy with the Mountain West and with Boise State due to funding and how they treat the football program and stuff like that. Then you have Troy Calhoun of Air Force. You can see him jump. He's got a great resume. He had an 11-win season last year with Air Force. You have Craig Bowl from Wyoming, who had a couple of great years. That's an interesting one as well. Then former head coach Mark Helfrich and former Oregon head coach Mark Helfrich and current FAU and former Colorado DC Jim Leavitt could potentially also be guys. Jim Leavitt was in the running for Colorado head coach last year, but he lost out to Mel Tucker. Mark Helfrich coached at Oregon, did okay for a couple years, then kind of fell off. Could happen. It's going to be interesting to see what Colorado does. In my opinion, with the way that college football is going, they should hire the unknown guy and just see how it goes. Why not? Just, why not? Due to all of the evidence that I can give you, Ed Orgeron, Dabo Swinney, when you're in a place like Colorado, you need a great recruiter. We'll see how that goes. Up next, we'll talk about the NBA All-Star Game rosters and the overall game itself.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Why do I keep talking about All-Star games? Oh my god. I keep mentioning to you guys that I really don't like All-Star games, but yet I keep talking about them. I don't know why. I guess All-Star games are just a fascination to me, because at their core, All-Star games are very intriguing. Because you have all the best players, especially in the NBA, where it's the league of power teams or whatever, where you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard playing for the Clippers. You got LeBron James and Anthony Davis playing, and stuff like that. You just have these power trios or power duos taking over the league, especially recently. You had the Miami Heat, you had the big three of the Celtics, you had Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant. So these power teams, these all-star ridden teams, are becoming more and more popular during the regular season. I guess that's why the All-Star Game is so interesting, because you get to see how they would actually play with each other, see if there's any chemistry, see if there's any recruiting going along. Like last year, LeBron drafted Anthony Davis first, and there was some talking between them in the locker room. There's a picture of them talking in the locker room, and then look where it turned out. The Lakers are one of the best teams in the Western Conference. You have LeBron and Anthony Davis, two of the top 5 players in the NBA, playing together on one team. So yeah, I guess that's why it's interesting. I'm trying to figure out ways this is interesting, because to me, last year it was like 160 to 155 or something like that. This new All-Star Game format doesn't really do anything for me, because it's just overall it's just kind of confusing. And it's cool that everything's for charity, but it's still overall just confusing to the general populace. I remember when it came out, everybody was just confused about what it was and why we're doing this and stuff like that. Will I be watching? Probably not. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's going to be interesting because there will be Kobe Bryant tribute, so I might watch some of that. But knowing the NBA, everything will be posted on social media, and I'll probably see everything from social media. So that's that. So let's get into the rosters. Let's just mention the rosters and, talk about it. So Team Giannis, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course, Joel Embiid, Pascal Siakam, Kemba Walker, Trae Young. Pretty solid starting 5 right there. Then the reserves, you have Chris Middleton, Bam Adebayo, I don't know what that name is, Rudy Gobert, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Brandon Ingram, Donovan Mitchell. So that's Team Giannis. That's Team Giannis. Then you go on to Team LeBron. You have LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, Luka Doncic, James Harden. Good Lord. What is Giannis doing? What is he doing? First off, you have LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard on the same team, which that's just absurd. You're going to have those two on the same team? What? And then you add in Luka Doncic and Anthony Davis? And then you add James Harden? What on earth did Giannis just not... I understand that Giannis not choosing James Harden. I understand that. He wanted a guy who passed the ball. That's why he got Trae Young, which, if you're going to get a guy who passes the ball, that's one of the best guys to get the pass the ball, because Trae Young makes amazing passes. Just outrageous passes. I've seen him make so outrageous passes. But LeBron James, best player in the league, possibly greatest of all time. Anthony Davis, number 3 player in the league, debatable. One of the best players in the league. Kawhi Leonard, number 2 best player in the league, debatable, of course. Luka Doncic, who's the best young player in the league. He's better than Trae Young, which still salty about the Hawks drafting Luka Doncic just to trade him to the Mavericks and then drafting Trae Young, which Trae Young is a phenomenal player. Don't get me wrong. I just thought Luka Doncic was better. And he is. And he's continuing to do magical things for the Mavericks. He's been injured recently, but he's back. He's going to play in the All-Star game. Then you add James Harden into the mix, the best scorer in the league. Whether or not you believe it or not, he is the best scorer in the league. These stats back it up. His play back it up. He's the best scorer in the league. You can't. You may complain about his fouling techniques, his technique of getting fouled all the time, or you complain about his general play style. But you can't deny that he is the best shooter in the league, or one of the best shooters in the league. Oh, and then, by the way, their 6th guy, the 6th guy on the reserves, he's on the bench to start out, Damian Lillard. Lillard, not Leonard. Damian Lillard. Then you have Ben Simmons. That's a guy who could pass, Giannis. It's not like they're going to be struggling for people to pass. Then you got Jokic, the Joker. Got Jason Tatum. Got Chris Paul. Russell Westbrook. Another one of the best scorers in the league. If Team LeBron doesn't score 200 points, overall, of course, because of this stupid format, if they don't score 200 points, I will be disappointed. I know they're not going to try, because of the NBA All-Star Game. They never try. I know they're not going to try. But good Lord, if they do not win and score 200 points, then what are we doing here? If I was Team LeBron, I'd be like, we're coming in here and scoring 200 points. Because the other team's not going to play defense. We have the best defense. I haven't discussed defense at all because it's the All-Star game. Nobody's going to play defense. But Team LeBron could potentially play defense for like one quarter and win 70-0 in one quarter. Because the only thing I see going on for Team Giannis is Giannis making a cool move or something like that, or Trae Young shooting it from half court. If this was a real basketball game, that is the only thing I see going for Team Giannis. Siakam, good player. Haven't really watched him that much. Joel Embiid, he's soft, according to Shaquille O'Neal. You have Rudy Gobert. He's good at defense. There you go. Kyle Lowry, he's okay. Brandon Ingram, he's budding. He's getting better. Donovan Mitchell's pretty good. But other than that, are you going to rely on Trae Young shooting from half court every possession? Because you're not going to do anything in the paint. When you got LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Kawhi Leonard, how are you going to even get past that? That is friggin'. All you got to do is just stick their arms out, and you're not getting past them. The overall wingspan of that team is insane. Then you add in James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Luka Doncic, these guys who can score from anywhere. You got Ben Simmons, who can pass you the ball efficiently and has the best court vision out of everybody. Then you also have Chris Paul, who also has great court vision. Team LeBron. LeBron James has assembled the greatest team in NBA All-Star history. Or in the draft era, in the NBA draft, All-Star draft era, or whatever. I don't... And now, of course, I say all this, and Team Giannis is going to win because it's the All-Star game, and none of it matters. The points barely matter. The points matter for charities. But it's just absurd. The absurdity of how good Team LeBron is just getting to me so hard right now. But that will do it for the show. Thank you for listening, everybody. Remember, Valentine's Day is tomorrow, and I don't have an ad read. I'm just letting you know. It's tomorrow. Get something. Get just anything. Get a card. Get some flowers. You can pick flowers from a bush. That's better than nothing. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to do every kiss from Kay or whatever. Just get a couple flowers. Get a card. Cheap card. Get a plush bear or something like that. Just do something. It goes a long way. This has been the GSMC Sports Podcast. Like, rate, review us. Review me. Tell me how terrible I am, especially with names and speaking, even though my whole thing is speaking. Follow me on Twitter at Strickland_Josh. Then, of course, you can follow GSMC Sports on Twitter, GSMC_sports. And I'll see y'all on Sunday. Well, maybe I'll recap the All-Star game. Probably not. But thank you for listening, everybody, and I hope you have a great Valentine's Day if you actually get something.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.